And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Godzilla! Oh, wow. I got this in the mail, and I get packages in the mail, and I said, oh, a game, what is it? Open the box, saw this, and I said, whoa, this is cool. Come on, really, in this game, each player takes one of the kaiju monsters, Godzilla, King Ghidorah, Rodan, whatever, and you're fighting one another, smashing buildings, fighting tanks. Come on, that's so cool. Then I looked at the designer, Richard Berg, and I thought, wow. Because Richard Berg has designed from what I hear, some fantastic war games, but his games are deep, involved, complex, take hours and hours and hours and hours, and sometimes months, I'm not exaggerating, to play. Well, really? Well, okay, whatever. It's Godzilla. So I open it up and I play it, and you know what? Wow. The idea is awesome. The thoughts behind it, great. The execution, where was the development team on this one? Because it's fantastic. But somewhere along the way, they made a lot of muff-ups. Let's look at it. There's a lot that comes with the game. As you can see, the board looks great. You see the city there as it's all just smashed up completely from different the monsters that are rampaging through it. And you're going to be putting buildings on the board. You got 1 level buildings, and they can go all the way up to level 2 buildings. It comes with these plastic pieces which actually have to be rotated 90 degrees or else they won't fit in, which is a little annoying because when you're trying to set things up quickly, remembering to rotate, and that's not the only problem, but first let's talk about something that's great, alright, and that's these monsters. Fantastic. Oh, look at them, and they look good. Now this gentleman has a hard time staying on his feet, but the other ones all have a nice tail that balances them out. And when they're marching across the board, they just look good, and they certainly look menacing towards the buildings and each other. When a building is destroyed, it turns into rubble, which is left on the ground. Now that's all well and good. The problem is most of the monsters, well, he can stand in the rubble, but for most of them, they can't stand on the rubble and they're constantly falling off. So we constantly have monsters that are taking naps on buildings, or they look like they've been knocked out or whatever because we can't get them to stand on the buildings themselves. So it's cool, but just not very functional. Then there's the military units, and the military units come in different types. There's tanks and there's armored personnel vehicles, and they'll be driving around attacking the monsters. They're more of a nuisance than anything else. But the problem is, if you see, I put them on the board, but they just fade in real easily. You have to kind of look to see them there. Not a big deal, but if I was keeping this game, I would replace all the tanks with little plastic tanks. Yes, I know when there's a problem over which tank to move, first you put them in number order, but in the long run it really doesn't matter, and plastic tanks would look cool on the board. So there's a basic game and an advanced game. In the games, each player is going to take a card of their character, a giant card of their character that keeps track of their health and keeps track of their energy. The basic side just shows a picture, the other side shows a bunch of special abilities of what they can do when they're powered up. Players will also take action cards and combat cards that match their character. For example, here, King Ghidorah will take this action card of heal, and he has a flight card and a movement card, and a couple more flight cards. And he'll get different. He has a throw object card. He has size and strength, like Godzilla has rip and tear. And each of the monsters has different attack cards that they can use. So on your turn, you basically will power up your energy points, and most of the time you get 10, but you might get 11 if you have a lot more energy than everybody else. You'll power up your energy points, and then you'll use them mostly to walk around and destroy stuff. Usually it costs 1 to move into another space, but it costs more to go into a building, and every time you destroy a building, on the outside of the track you'll see a destruction track, and you'll move up your token on that track. Now that has a couple things. First of all, the military always goes after the most destructive monster. Again, not a big deal because they're more of a nuisance. They roll 6-sided die and they hit you on a 6. But still, that could be the deciding factor. So military will chase the most destructive monster, but the most destructive monster also gets to take their actions first. And when they're attacking the other players or having a chance to power up, over here on the side of the board you see event cards. 6 of them are laid out. There's power-up cards that will show up in the advanced game, and the player can take one of those in their turn, so the player goes first has a chance to take them, and they can power up and use these special abilities on their cards. So, and also many times a scenario, and there's different scenarios, having a certain amount of destruction points can win you the scenario. Combat's fairly simple. On the player's turn, they can take a monster and just move it into a tank or armored personnel carrier and kill them, although they do get one parting shot when you do that. To fight another monster, you'll be attacking with one of the attack cards in your hand, and they will be defending with one of the defense cards in their hand. So let's say Godzilla attacks Rodan. So you put these cards next to each other like this, and then someone rolls a die. And whatever number you roll, let's say we roll a 4. If we roll a 4, then Godzilla will do stun. That's what that symbol means. He will stun Rodan, and Rodan does nothing back. But it's always possible that one of them will do something. For example, if you roll a 2 here, that's a weak point on Godzilla, and Rodan will not only stun him, but he'll knock him down because he has that little white dot. And I mean, there's all these symbols, and you have to figure out what the symbols mean and how they match up. But it's an interesting combat system. The only problem is there's very few of these cards. Each character has like 3 or 4, and they seem almost kind of randomly distributed. I don't really understand exactly how they work. But they have different cards that you will use to attack and fight one another. And when you fight each other, you do damage, and usually if you do enough damage to one of the monsters, they get all injured, and they have to go back to Monster Island. So everyone has points that they're going to take on their turn. They have energy points. Once you're done taking all your points, the next player goes. When all the players go, you roll a die, and that event card is taken. For example, this one here is the X-Aliens. You target a random kaiju. If powered up, that kaiju discards his power-up card. Otherwise, he starts his next turn with only 5 energy. And so a lot of times these cards will target a random one, but sometimes they will target the kaiju who's the most destructive. Like here's one, target all kaiju with 50 or more destruction points, etc. The oxygen destroyer. So you have to be careful because these cards may affect you. Once the event card is played, then another card is drawn and put into its spot. So this is the way that the game works. There's some wonky rules about moving. There's a pile of info cards over here, I should mention, that talk about a lot of the rules. They show you what each of the symbols means, how exactly it works, buildings, and how fire works. And this is all nice and good. I think it would have been better in this instance to have these on a card because it just was difficult to see. There's knockdown cards and stun cards. And like I said, there's a lot of things that simply just weren't explained very thoroughly in this rule book. I mean, look at the rule book here. It's just like a photocopied thing, and it's not very well done at all. I mean, does this scream we just threw it together or what? There's not even any art here. So, I mean, they did some great art on these cards. I won't argue that. The cards of the monsters look absolutely fantastic, and the miniatures look great. But other than that, there obviously was a bunch of missteps in the production and in the rules of the game. Wow, I wanted to like this game. I really did. The production values are great. And I won't argue or deny the fact that when we played the game, we were just living it up. Like, moving the Godzilla monsters across the board, smashing, talking smack. Come on, Godzilla, bring it. Stuff like that. And it was fun. It's just that we're sitting there going, okay, we played this card. Can I play this card now? Does this card work here? What are we trying to do again? Did I just win by knocking these buildings over? How do these tanks move again? Because the tanks move after every time the monster moves. And it just felt kind of fiddly, but without a lot of payoff. The combat system, neat, but, why should I attack him if there's a good chance he's going to nail me? Can I block this ranged attack? And if not, what am I supposed to use this card for? When can I take this event? How do you catch up to someone in the lead? There was just so many different things going on throughout the whole course of the game, things that the rule book doesn't answer. I mean, when you see people asking the designer questions online before the game is barely released and tons of questions, it's a bad sign. Man, I'm telling you, some people are going to buy this game, some of you are going to get it just because it's Godzilla. Fine. And you know what? That's cool. I like it too. And I know one guy in my gaming group really wants it because it's about Godzilla. But no one thought the game was that fantastic. It was decent, but the production, the problems with the tiles and the monsters falling over, and then the really just ambiguous, not well-formatted rulebook just kind of ruined this one. At least made it a game that could have had greatness into something that's not.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.